In the 1930s, Grant County, Indiana became the site of one of the most infamous lynchings in our history. And this is the reason it's number 94 on the list of the system that we call the Sundown infrastructure: segregation, terror, and violence to control where our ancestors could live and move freely at night. So, on the Sundown spectrum, exclusion sometimes looked like being pushed into places that white residents didn't want to live. Neighborhoods were boxed in, communities were pushed near railroads and factories and flood zones. The widening of the Sundown lens says boundaries of exclusion were enforced.
Noblesville relied on a form of segregation that would have looked more common to towns like Kokomo, Marion, and Fort Wayne, where African Americans were isolated, actually in the neighborhood where I am now, which is along and to the west of 8th Street towards White River. Again, an area known for its railroad lines, its factories, and its floodplains. In a sense, places where white people didn't want to live if they could afford to live somewhere else. Well, as you can imagine, this system, these cruel traditions, started to collapse during the civil rights movement. But that doesn't mean that it really changed the hearts of people.
Even inside these boundaries, our ancestors still built churches, families, and leaders, because inside of the infrastructure, we existed.
Walter and Flossie Bailey were a black couple in the 1920s. He was an educated man, a respected physician. She was a poised and elegant speaker, but they did not enjoy the rewards of their success in the same manner as most of their peers. It was a bizarre period in American history in which African Americans were free to obtain an education and engage in commercial pursuits. Yet regardless of their accomplishments, they were denied entrance into clubs and businesses. They could not use the same public facilities as their white neighbors. They attended separate schools and churches. Segregation was a way of life. The separation of the races was built into the daily routine, as though it were as natural as the rising and setting of the sun. But the immorality of racial discrimination could not be denied forever. Walter and Flossie Bailey were among those who refused to accept it. The Baileys filed a lawsuit against a local movie theater for denying them entrance. Despite losing their case, they continued to speak out against hospital and school segregation.
Inside the Sundown infrastructure, crossing boundaries could come with unjust consequences, sometimes deadly ones, like in August of 1930. 3 black teenagers were arrested, but the legal process never had a chance to play out.
It was night of August the 7th, 1930, and it was after dark, and I knew something was going to happen.
It was a smothery day in summer when you just couldn't get your breath hardly. And all over town, you felt like something was wrong.
The mob gathering down there, you know.
There had never been anything like this. It come unexpected to the whole town.
We did. Sheriff Jake Campbell, he had been looking for the 3 colored boys, and they went out to the home of Shipp, Smith, and Cameron.
Tom Shipp, who was 19, Abe Smith, who was 18, James Cameron, who was 16. James Cameron especially was very slight in stature. He looked like he was 12 or 13, not even 16.
You better stick around, so there's going to be some excitement. So we went down to Marion and drove in on the square just for curiosity.
People from all over town, from all over the county, get in their cars and drive to the courthouse square. Hundreds of cars blocking the streets, parked at all kinds of crazy angles like spilled matchsticks. There were some estimates by newspaper reporters that as many as 10,000 people were at the scene.
7:30, and it just seemed like things were just normal. And then all at once, things just broke loose and started to happen.
A lot of them were good citizens, but they'd been whipped up to an edge where they were ready for anything. And they got that rope on one of the hardware stores here. The rope that they used was new rope. It was about 3/8 inch. I used to have a piece of it. And this mob started for the jail, and as it went, it got bigger all the way.
There were women and children out there.
They come dragging one of the boys out of the jail. They took him right down the sidewalk. Everybody was kicking, hitting him, and everything else.
People beating on him with anything they had in their hand and screaming and carrying. It was just out of this world. It was terrible.
Thousands of people waiting for a spectacle.
A block and a half from the Grant County Jail to a maple tree on the courthouse square. He was alive all the way, and there, with another noose, they threw over the limb of that tree and pulled the body up.
But that night, there were 3 teenagers pulled from the jail. 2 were unalived. 1 survived. Did I tell you they made a postcard from the lynching? And the lyrics to Strange Fruit were inspired by this lynching.
My name was James Cameron. I can never forget that night. When they put me in this jail, I was in there about 3 hours when daylight approached. And they were gathering in small knots of people, 8 to 10 people at a time, and shaking fists up at the jail. And the crowds kept getting bigger and bigger all during the day. So after 15 to 20 minutes of having their pictures taken and everything, they came back to get me. And just then the sheriff came in, and he was sweating like somebody had thrown a bucket of water in his face. He told the mob leader, said, "Get the hell out of here." So you already hung 2 of them, so that ought to satisfy you. And then they began to yell for me like a favorite basketball or football player. They said, "We want Cameron, we want Cameron, we want Cameron." And I looked over into the faces of people as they were beating me along the way up to the tree. I was pleading for some kind of mercy, looking for a kind face, but I could find none. They got me up to the tree, and they got a rope and they put it around my neck, and they began to push me under the tree. And that's when I prayed to God. I said, "Lord, have mercy and forgive me my sins."
This is the point where we don't know exactly what happened. Some people say that a man stood up on the top of a car roof and shouted out, "He's innocent, he didn't do it." Whatever was said, whoever said it, whatever the cause, the mob decided at the last minute not to lynch James Cameron.
Years later, Mr. Cameron would become a civil rights activist, and he dedicated his life to documenting lynchings in America so that we would never forget this history. But this is how it works inside of the Sundown infrastructure. Thousands of people gathered to watch the violence. Then that violence becomes a warning. You don't need a sign when the community is down for violence. Everyone already knows the consequences.
The air was charged with tension. Walter and Flossie, as vocal advocates for civil rights, were harassed by the gangs. As the president of the Indiana chapter of the NAACP, Flossie was at particularly high risk.
I can't begin to express the fear I felt during those awful days. Armed policemen had to escort my husband and his nursing staff to his medical office each day. I made telephone calls and I sent telegrams trying to get additional police protection at the jail. My phone rang constantly with people making death threats against me, and people would drive past my home while deliberately backfiring their cars. Can you imagine? Despite their best efforts, I refused to be intimidated.
Grant County, like many other places, didn't need a sign saying Sundown. It was set by the infrastructure. Segregation created the boundaries, violence enforced them, and terror made sure everyone would remember. Grant County wasn't the only place in Indiana where this infrastructure existed. Next week, we'll look at another county in Indiana to see how the same system played out somewhere else. So I'd love to have you follow along and join as I map the Sundown infrastructure across Indiana. Make sure you subscribe and join the conversation below. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're just getting started. Let's learn.